Whew. All right, my friends, my first hour friends, thank you so much for being flexible. We're gonna jump through this stuff really quickly today, and then we will reconnect tomorrow to make sure we are all on the same page. But I appreciate your flexibility, your willingness to watch this and copy down these notes, because we're just gonna quickly walk through what we would have done today. So at any point in this video, you can pause it to like write down the notes and stuff. So this is all that we are going to be writing down today. So it's our essay overview notes. Specifically, today our job was going to be to focus kind of on two things. Number one being prompts. This word we're going to talk about, we'll define in a second. And then what a proficient essay should look like. So between these notes and the assignment that's on Google Classroom, that should help you do it. So first things first is let's talk through some notes. So again, you might want to pause this video at some point to write all this stuff into your ISN, because we will continue these notes tomorrow. But the first thing we want to talk about is when we're writing an essay, the thing that's going to tell us what to do is called the prompt. So for our definition, we'd say the prompt is the directions or instructions that tell you what to write about, right? So usually it's some sort of thing that, gives you some background, and it says, all right, now write an essay that argues this, or now write an essay that explains this, or whatever the case may be. So we'll look at some examples in a second. But anytime we get a prompt, we want to know what to do with it. We want to know how to interpret it. We kind of have to be, archaeologists and sort of dig through the prompt to figure out, like, what is this thing really telling me to do? So there's a 3-step process to figure that out, what your job is when it comes to writing an essay. So to understand a prompt, first of all, usually somewhere in that prompt, there is what I call the "hey, you do this" part. That clearly tells you what your job is. So somewhere within, usually a prompt might be like a couple of sentences. Somewhere within those couple of sentences, there might be a single sentence or a particular phrase that says, here's your clearest definition of your job. And again, we'll look at some examples momentarily. Okay, then after you figure out the "hey, you do this" part, then you need to identify key words that you specifically are going to have to reuse in your essay in order to answer the question. So the thing that I always ask myself for this step is, well, if I want to write a response to this essay, what words can I not avoid using? Like, which words am I going to have to use in order to answer the question? So if my favorite thing is bananas. We always talk about bananas. If it says, write an essay about the different things that make bananas great, well, I probably can't answer that question without using the word banana. So that'd be one of our keywords. Again, we'll look at an example. Okay, and then once we've done that, we can simplify the prompt in steps or in basic language. So hopefully by this point, you've paused the video at some point to get all these notes in your ISN. If not, this is your time to do it. Ready, set, pause. Now that you have your notes in your ISN, let's talk about what we were going to do with them. So this is that document that now is on Google Classroom. It should be assigned to you so that you can see it and edit it. You should have your own copy. So this is our essay overview work for today. So what the first thing we were going to do was, together after we did our notes, is we were going to look at an example prompt and kind of walk through the 3 steps that we talked about for breaking down a prompt. So here's an example prompt. It says, poets often use different literary devices to convey meaning in their work. After reading the poem Daily Flowers by Rose Blossom and The Eagle by Hugh Bird, write an essay that compares and contrasts how the authors each use word choice to create emotion in their poems. Okay? Be sure to use direct quotes from both poems to support your response. So the first thing that I would want to do is I would want to look for the "hey, you do this" part. So somewhere in there, you can see it's like 4 lines long. But somewhere in there, specifically, this part, write an essay that compares and contrasts how the authors each use word choice to create emotions in their poems. That, to me, feels like a clear direction. Usually, when we're looking for the "hey, you do this" part, it's going to start with a word like write, or a word like argue, or a word like explain. It's going to start with an action word, something that you need to do. Write an essay that does this. Now, there's other things in there that I'm going to need to do, right? I got to read those poems. I got to use direct quotes. But the thing that clearly tells me my job in writing the essay is that part. That's the "hey, you do this" part. Okay? Then the next thing I want to do is bold or highlight the key words. Okay? So that should be like words that I have to use in my essay. If I were going to write this essay, which this is not obviously the essay you're going to write, but if I were going to write it, what words or phrases would I have to use in my essay in order to answer the question? Well, I for sure have to use the phrase word choice, because that's what I'm talking about, right? I can't answer the prompt without talking about word choice. Probably can't answer the prompt without talking about emotion, right? I probably cannot answer the prompt without talking about these specific poems. So the titles of the poems, probably the authors' names too, right? All those ingredients of tag that we've talked about before, those are going to be keywords that I have to reuse, right? So daily flowers, rose blossom, titles and names, okay? Probably can't answer the prompt without using the word poem or poems, right? Now, there are other words in the prompt that are important, like essay is important because it tells me what my final product is going to be, but I don't have to use the word essay in order to answer this, right? I might use the word compare, I might use the word contrast, but I don't have to in order to answer the prompt, right? I could just say, well, this poem does this poem does that, here's how this poem does it, but then this poem does it differently. Nowhere in there am I using the word compare or contrast. Again, it's important because it's part of my job. That's why it's in the hey, you do this part. But it's not a key word because it's not a word that I have to repeat. Okay? So that's what we're looking for is words that we have to repeat. Okay, and then we would simplify it. So to simplify it, that just means put it into basic steps or put it into like a one sentence blip that tells you specifically what your job is. So I usually like to do it in steps. So I would say step 1 is read 2 poems. Step 2 is write an essay. And then step 3, which kind of goes, or maybe we'll call this 2B, right? Because it's part of writing the essay, which is compare and contrast how authors use word choice to create emotion. And step 3, use direct quotes. Okay, so all of that is part of this prompt, but now I've just kind of simplified it into sort of a checklist that I can use in order to make sure that I've done everything that I need to do. So here's what I'm going to have you do right now. This is another sample prompt. I'm going to have you pause the video at this point, see if you can walk through those 3 steps. I'm going to pause it myself, and then we'll come back together. It won't be the video. It won't take a long time. But you're going to pause the video, and then once you unpause, we'll go over the answer. Ta-da! All right, so here's what yours should look like. Now, it might be a little bit different, but in general, our hey, you do this part is here. Write an essay that explains how the narrator's opinion of Danny changes over the course of the story. Some keywords you should have probably identified. Astronaut's dilemma, so the tag ingredients, right? The story, the title. The narrator's opinion, you could have bolded. I don't know if you have to use that word, but it's a pretty important word, so you wouldn't be wrong if you did bold it. But we definitely are talking about this character named Danny, and we're talking about how that opinion changes, right? So if I'm breaking it down into steps, I'm reading the story, I'm writing an essay, I'm explaining how the narrator's opinion of Danny changes, and I'm using details from the whole story. Okay, so that's our process. So this is now the real prompt that we are going to be writing to. So this is the prompt that will kind of fuel our essay that we're going to be working on for the next couple of weeks. So let's read it together. It says, in literature, authors often choose words for specific reasons. Sometimes those words are intended to create a feeling in the reader, which helps create a theme in the text. After reading The Odyssey by Robin Lister and various poems, write an essay that examines how the authors use word choice and tone to communicate a common theme in both the story and a poem of your choosing. Be sure to support your thinking with evidence from the text. Okay, so again, there's a hey, you do this part in here. Write an essay that examines how they use word choice and tone to communicate a common theme in both the story and a poem of your choosing. There's some important words that I have to use, right? I'm going to be talking about word choice probably. I'm going to be talking about tone probably. And I'm going to be talking about theme probably. Specifically, I'm going to be talking about it in The Odyssey. And I'm going to be talking about that book is by Robin Lister, right? And I'm going to be talking about a poem. Now, the prompt doesn't specify what poem it will be, so it sounds like you'll have a choice around that. And it's going to be from some of the poems we've been reading over the past handful of weeks. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. But so like if there was a specific poem's title that I was going to write about, I would have to bold that word. But for this, I'm just going to use the word poem to represent that I better, one of those key words is I better talk about that poem. Okay? So simplified steps. I'm not going to type them down. You can, just because we've done it a couple of times now. But step 1 would be write an essay. Or maybe read the book, right? Because it's after reading the Odyssey. So read the book and the poems. Write an essay. Talk about how authors use word choice and tone to create a theme. Support my thinking with evidence from the text. Those are my steps. Okay? So, all that being said, now we hopefully have a better idea of what you are going to be doing when you write that poem, or that essay about that poem in the story. So what you have below that, this is part 2, this is what you're going to tackle and we'll talk about tomorrow in class, is you have a sample essay. So this is a sample essay that's similar to the essay you're going to be writing about, except instead of talking about the Odyssey in one of the poems we've read, it's going to talk about the Odyssey in this poem called If. So this is not going to be one of the poems you can write about. It's you're going to be writing about some different ones, but it still gives you an idea of what that final product is going to look like. So your job today, after you've done the prompt stuff, is to read this sample essay, and you're going to make some comments on it. So if you look, we're going to do 2 noticings and 2 wonderings. So what I mean by that is a comment on the side could be something like, ooh, I noticed that the essay starts in a creative way or something. So I can make a comment and say, here's my noticing. The essay starts creatively with an image and powerful language. Okay, you can't use that one. That one's mine. But then I would make that comment, right? And so then along the side, I've got my first comment. So that's a noticing. The wondering is, why is this essay the way that it is? Or why did this author do this? Or why did they format it this way? Why is it organized this way? Why didn't they do it that way? Why is it, this many paragraphs or that many paragraphs or whatever, right? So any questions you have about it, you can make those comments as well. So like along the side, I should see at least 2 noticings, at least 2 wonderings. You can do more if you like, but we'll come together tomorrow in class. We'll talk a little bit about what you found as we continue through learning about essays. So again, thanks for your focus today. Thanks for your hard work. Thanks for sticking with me. The old technology banana played its tricks today, but it will, I promise you, it'll be gone tomorrow. So come to office hours or visit me if you need any help. Otherwise, that's it for today. See you.